Americans are paying more than ever for their health care. It's why we launched a 10 News investigation to compare the cost of prescription drugs. Americans spend hundreds of billions of dollars on prescription drugs every year, more than any other country. We are taking a deeper look at the cost for some of the most common medications and why those prices can vary and by how much.
WBIR 10 News investigative reporter Michael Crowe shows us how to make sure you're getting a fair deal.
Susan Bradford has struggled to pay for her medications for years, but a few months back, waiting to pick up her asthma inhaler at the pharmacy, she was shocked to learn the price had gone up. It was now $90, even after her insurance.
And I stood there like, I can't afford that. I just can't afford this.
Bradford works with seniors who are unable to pay for their medications. Now she found herself in the same position.
And there have been times that I haven't had the money for that inhaler and I've had to wait until a paycheck. And it's been rough. You really feel it.
Her situation is not uncommon. As more and more Americans move to high-deductible insurance plans, more people are paying more money up front for their prescriptions.
But we wanted to know, what are people paying? So we called and tracked the prices at Walgreens, CVS, Walmart, Blues, Max, Kroger, and Food City for these 5 commonly prescribed drugs: Synthroid, Crestor, Ventolin HFA, Nexium, and Advair Discus. We called and asked for the cash price for a 30-day supply of the smallest recommended dose. And what we found is the price can vary widely for an identical medication across different locations.
It's a difference that could end up costing you hundreds in a year. Take a 30-day supply of Synthroid, for example, for long-term thyroid problems. At Kroger, you'd pay $37.59, but at Walmart, you'd pay $57.71 for the same drug.
Why would one store have a different price than another?
You know, stores can charge, from their perspective, what they would like to charge for a medication.
Bill Campine runs Healthcare Blue Book in Nashville, which helps patients find and pay a fair cost for healthcare services, including medications. He says the range of price differences we found bears out to the industry as a whole.
Certainly it's something we see in the data when we look at the data for individual pharmacy prescriptions.
Our investigation also found differences in the cash price for Crestor. We were quoted anywhere from $298 to $328, a difference of $30. Over 1 year, that's a $360 difference. Or for COPD drug Advair Discus, $385 up to $436, a difference of $51 or $612 annually. For 3 of the 5 drugs, Kroger Pharmacy was the most affordable. And Kroger pointed out in an email, our pharmacy teams can work with patients to help them find lower price alternative therapies. They also point to generic drugs as a way to reduce cost. On the opposite end of the price spectrum for 4 of the 5 drugs is Food City. They could not sit down to discuss the prices, but a representative said in a statement that Food City pharmacists work diligently to provide their patients with quality health care and the lowest out-of-pocket expense possible. That representative also said drug pricing is very convoluted, citing third-party contracts, pharmacy benefit manager fees, discount programs, coupons, and manufacturer pricing as contributing to their in-store cost. He adds nothing can replace face-to-face interaction with a pharmacist. But for Susan, it's frustrating to know that prices can be so different.
I actually had no idea it was that contingent. And it makes it impossible to budget.
But for industry experts like Campine, it's no surprise.
Why don't consumers realize this is happening?
Well, I think for consumers, it's very difficult because, you know, you may only use 1 or 2 pharmacies, you don't call around, and the differences in prices aren't widely advertised.
And while that's upsetting to Susan, she thinks more about the people she cares for on a fixed income.
This is what I'm facing. I can only imagine what other folks who don't have the kind of safety net of good health insurance, what they go through.
And it's really hard to convey just how much legwork it was to call every pharmacy for these prices, really more than the average consumer has time to do, and some pharmacists were even hesitant to give us a price over the phone. And John and Robin, we requested interviews with every single company named in this report. All of them turned us down for in-person sit-downs except for Blues. You're going to hear from Dave Ballou coming up later this week. The rest, we have posted their statements on our website. We also have some interesting findings about the price differences between locations of the same chain. Depending on the location, you could save more than $100 a year. Stick with us for that tomorrow and every day this week.
Not only revealing, but real money.
Absolutely.
Michael, thanks very much.
You know you are getting a fair price for your prescriptions. A 10 News investigation worked for months to get that answer for you.
We showed you the cost for prescribed drugs can vary between pharmacy companies, some as much as $51 for an identical drug or more than $600 in a year. But that's not the only place these numbers can differ.
WBIR 10 News investigator Michael Crowe shows us how one pharmacy is charging different prices in different neighborhoods for the same drug.
To figure out the costs different pharmacies charge for the 5 drugs we've been following, we called 3 locations from every major chain in town and asked for the cash price. And what we found is often that price varies not just between companies, but often between locations of the same chain.
To Bill Campine of Healthcare Blue Book, that's no surprise.
You know, for most patients, they want to believe that the healthcare industry itself is looking out for their best interest, not only from a health standpoint, but also from a financial standpoint.
He says while any given pharmacist is looking to care for their patients, cost has not been their #1 concern. But with more Americans moving to high deductible plans that expose them directly to the cost of medications until their deductible is met, that may need to change.
So I think for patients, again, it's very difficult to understand what the price of a drug is going to be.
Difficult because the cost can change week to week within the market. But we found the cash price doesn't just vary across time, but across town.
And some of the most pronounced differences within one company were at Walgreens. Take Crestor, for example. We were quoted $303.99 on Chapman Highway, but $311.99 for the same drug on Cumberland Avenue. Back at that store on Chapman, we were told it would be $398.99 for Advair Discus, while it would cost $403.99 up in Fountain City.
The analogy I would make is you could go to several different Exxon stations in one city, and you're going to see different prices at the different stations. And so within pharmacy, that same phenomena can occur.
But the difference is at a gas station, that price is posted out front. When you call a pharmacy, sometimes they won't tell you the price. When we reached out, Walgreens acknowledged the practice of varying prices, writing, "Our prices reflect the cost of doing business in the neighborhoods we serve, as well as any nearby retail competition." Costs can vary from one location to another, even when they are a few blocks apart in dense urban areas, based on the store's cost of real estate, its hours of operation, including whether it is open 24 hours, labor costs, and the number of customers it serves each day, among other factors. But Campine worries it's a practice many people are not aware of.
The transparency in the industry about what price is paid in each stage of distributing drugs is not very clear. It hasn't been.
And while those differences may seem small in the short term, the costs add up month after month. You multiply this out to 1 year, you're paying nearly $100 more for Crestor, $60 more for the Advair. Dave Ballou owns Ballou Drugs. His pharmacy's prices fall in the middle of the road, but fluctuate more than other stores we followed.
Our philosophy across the board is to base our pricing on our cost plus a percentage.
He says that lets him keep costs lower, but they might swing more.
It's very possible for one of my stores to be at the end of a bottle of medication that was priced at an old price, be it higher or lower. And another location might have gotten into new product at a different price.
He says many patients don't realize this happens behind the scenes.
The problem with this is life-saving medication in some instances. People have to have these medications.
It's why Campine says it's important for patients to put in the work and make sure they're getting the best price available.
So it is critical, right, for more and more Americans to understand what the price of their medications are and to be able to shop and compare and get better value, because much of this cost is coming directly out of their pocket on a monthly basis.
So how did we compare these prices? Well, we called 19 Walgreens stores asking for the cash price for a 30-day supply that is across Knoxville and all the way up to Rogersville. At one store, they wouldn't give us the price for any drugs, saying they were too busy. At another, after 3 of the 5, a manager stopped the pharmacist from giving out the rest. And tomorrow, we are going to look at the path a drug takes to market and how experts say that affects the cost. So a lot more to come. We have stories coming up, guys, every night this week talking about this complicated issue.
It is revealing for sure. Michael, thank you.
Americans pay hundreds of billions every year on prescription drugs, but as our 10 News investigation has shown you this week, not everyone is paying the same price for those drugs. We showed you this week how the same drug could cost up to $50 more a month between two pharmacies, or more than $600 a year, even when taking insurance out of the equation. And it can also vary between locations of the same chain.
Well, now, WBIR 10 News investigator Michael Crowe follows the money, and in this case, it's a complicated journey.
A big factor in the cost of a drug is the path it takes from where it's made to where it's bought. A lot of that system is based around a number known as the average wholesale price, or AWP. But that's not the same as the sticker price you pay at the pharmacy.
The actual price itself does not necessarily reflect, again, what the pharmacy or the retail pharmacy actually pays to the wholesaler for that drug. The AWP is usually far higher.
According to healthcare industry expert Bill Campine of Healthcare Blue Book in Nashville, drugs begin at a manufacturer. From there, the meds are sold to a wholesaler, which marks up the prices and takes a cut. Then, the pharmacy buys it from the wholesaler, marks it up again, and then sells it to you.
Naturally, that price is marked up as the drug goes from the manufacturer to the location where a consumer might buy it.
But it gets more complicated when you have insurance. A pharmacy benefit manager, or PBM, can get involved, negotiating a different price for the drug for their clients based on what the insurer will pay them. All of this behind the scenes.
One of the problems in drug pricing is that there's probably 15 different prices depending on who you are. For example, the federal government, the VA system, pays one price. A chain may pay a price based on volume or preferential. The PBMs, they'll negotiate rebates and things like that. So it goes way beyond the practice of pharmacy or medicine.
Glenn Farr is a professor of clinical pharmacy at UT. He says the delivery system of medications is so complex, it ends up making the cost very volatile and subject to changes over time or between pharmacies.
It gets a lot into negotiated prices and rebates and things like that that are probably out of the healthcare realm into the general business economic realm.
And he says with all that hidden pricing structure, it means the cost you pay at different pharmacies can vary, as our reporting this week found, with the cash price like we studied, and especially when insurance gets involved.
And there are some calls for transparency in those inner workings. We are going to talk about that later this week. And tomorrow, we are going to show you some tips on how you can reduce the cost you pay for medications and make sure you are getting the absolute best price available. And guys, we can talk about one of those right now. Almost all of the experts we talk to say, make some phone calls, shop around a little bit. There is a chance to save a lot of money there. But we're going to go into that tomorrow.
Absolutely. It takes a little time, but it's worth the payoff.
Absolutely.
All right. Michael, thank you.
You really have to take an active role in your care these days.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true.
All this week on 10 News, we brought you a series of investigations looking at the varying cost of prescription drugs. Good evening, everyone. We've shown you how, depending on the pharmacy you choose, you could save hundreds of dollars a year for some medications. Well, now WBIR 10 News investigator Michael Crowe shows us how to make sure you are getting the best price for your medications.
Prescription costs can be too much to handle. Just ask Susan Bradford.
And I stood there like, I can't afford that. I just can't afford this.
And a cost increase for a life-saving drug like an inhaler can mean it stays at the drugstore. We compared costs of 5 commonly prescribed drugs and found the amount you pay can vary not only between pharmacy companies, but sometimes even within the same chain. Susan Bradford takes another drug on our list, Crestor, for high cholesterol. At least she used to.
I did take Crestor, and that was probably one of the first things that I switched over to generic to be able to afford.
Generics are often much less expensive than the brand name drugs. But that's not the only way to save, according to Bill Campine of Healthcare Blue Book.
What can people do to make sure they're getting a fair deal?
Sure, there's a couple of very simple ways for any consumer to shop.
He says ask your doctor about a class substitute, drugs that are similar but not the same, and often much cheaper. Or for long-term meds, switch from a 30 to a 90-day supply by mail order. A fourth way is to pay cash and use a pharmacy discount card, especially if you don't have insurance. Many stores have these, and he also recommends an app called GoodRx, which finds manufacturer coupons for you for free. And the last thing is to counter shop. Call around just like we did, but be careful if buying drugs at different pharmacies, because if a pharmacist doesn't know all the medications you take, they can't prevent bad interactions.
You really have to take an active role in your care these days.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Particularly for cash pay patients or patients with a large deductible, it's important to understand those prices, understand your options.
But there's another school of thought in saving money as well. Dave Ballou of Ballou Drugs recommends picking one pharmacy that you trust.
Go in and meet that person if at all possible. Develop a relationship. Let us get to know you.
He says then that pharmacist can do their best to help you. But whatever you choose, one thing is clear. To protect yourself from overpaying, with millions more Americans on high deductible insurance, you need to be asking these questions.
So it is critical, right, for more and more Americans to understand what the price of their medications are and to be able to shop and compare and get better value, because much of this cost is coming directly out of their pocket on a monthly basis.
But for Susan, the complicated nature of the system still concerns her.
There is a lot of red tape and a lot of fine print. I mean, I have, an advanced degree in social work, and I find it all very difficult to negotiate through.
All week, we have been investigating just how much the price of some common prescription medications can vary across Knoxville and East Tennessee. We found buying some drugs just a few miles apart can mean the difference of hundreds of dollars a year.
Now, we took our findings to lawmakers. WBIR 10 News investigator Michael Crowe looks for solutions.
The differing price of prescriptions is a surprise to many, but not those with experience in the pharmacy industry.
It can be very volatile.
Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally worked as a pharmacist before serving in the state legislature. He's no stranger to the ever-changing price of pills. We showed him our 10 News investigation that found the same drugs can vary as much as $50 a month between chains and also between locations of the same company.
Do those price variations surprise you?
The amount of some of them did. The amount of some of them did.
But he says he doesn't see a way Tennessee could control those prices because they come from out of state. So we took those questions to someone out of state.
The consumer, that would be me, down buying or filling a prescription, needs to get the lowest, best price. And how those things happen is incredibly complicated.
We showed Congressman Phil Rowe our findings on the varying costs. He says he was struck by that in his practice as a doctor in the Tri-Cities.
That really meant a huge difference. I mean, $20 might not mean that much to me, but a lot of the patients that I saw, it meant a lot to them. They needed to save that $20 or $15.
He said while he does not support regulation for medication prices, he does see a solution.
I mean, you talk about that there is no transparency in the way these prescriptions are priced. How do we address that? How do we fix that?
Well, I think you can do it through legislation. That's one. I think more competition is better. There's no question.
And as Congress considers a repeal and possible replacement for Obamacare, Rowe hopes that a fundamental part of that legislation will include transparency mandates for pricing drugs.
It seems so obvious. Why doesn't that exist already?
Well, because who's to advantage? It only advantages me. There are powerful forces out there, and you've got big government, you've got insurance companies, you've got all of that are in control of now our healthcare system. And basically, this will put you and me back in charge when I can find out what Medicare actually paid on a bill before I go in. Maybe I could go in and negotiate even a better price.
And that transparency could make a big impact because right now it is very labor intensive to call around and compare prices. So it's tough to know really that you're getting the best price that is available to you. Now you can watch our entire 5-part investigation online at WBIR.com. Just click the investigations link under the local tab. We dig into how widely prices can vary from pharmacy to pharmacy and neighborhood to neighborhood, as well as how you can save on your prescriptions. Again, that's all on WBIR.com, guys. And this does not end here. We've had a lot of emails, people reaching out to us with their problems. There will be more stories, I'm sure.
In the end, you have to be your own advocate,
You
too.
absolutely do.
All right. Michael, thank you. Excellent.